All right, so we may be making some forward-looking statements today. Please base your purchasing decisions on current features and functionality and not on any forward-looking statements that we may make. Hello, I'm Jennifer Lee, Senior Admin Evangelist at Salesforce. Hello, everyone, and welcome to February's Automate This. We're live every month, so please come back to the same page to watch this again on video on demand. And the best way to be notified when we live stream is to set the reminder on the live stream episode page. You'll get an email reminder the day of the event. And to interact with the audience, post your comments. To interact with me and my guest presenters, start your question with the Q colon so I can easily scan through and identify your questions. So here's what you will learn in today's episode from our two guest presenters. 3 things you will learn from Myra: how to complete your first flow using Composer resources, how to test your flow, and how to use flow components. Now here are 3 things you will learn from Jen, not this Jen, but the other Jen. Value of mapping the process and data flow, how Composer and Salesforce Flow can be used together, and considerations as to why one tool should not do it all. And use that short URL that you see on the screen to listen to Jen on the Salesforce Admins podcast with Mike Gerholt. All right, today I'm going to be talking about 2 automation products used to sync data between systems, MuleSoft Composer and Flow. And I'm excited to be joined by 2 awesome admin rockstar muleys, Myra Wilson and Jen Cole. And wait until you see how they use clicks, not code, to build integrations between NetSuite and Salesforce using Composer and Flow. We're also joined by Director of Product Management at Salesforce, Anand Rohra. So welcome Myra, Jen, and Anand. And Anand will come back later on to give you a sneak peek into his roadmap and to also share what's upcoming at Trailblazer DX and to answer your MuleSoft Composer product questions. All right, so Myra, you're up first. How did you get started on your automation journey with Flow and Composer?
So I got started. My most recent endeavor with Flow and Composer actually came from our integration break in between Salesforce and our ERP NetSuite. So after months of manual processing in all of our sales processes, I found out that the integration would never be restored. So that started me on my journey of sourcing a new tool. Composer was recommended to me probably about a week later by my Salesforce account manager, and I was instantly drawn to it due to the fact that it was plug and play. It was easy to implement, and most important of all, it was built on Salesforce. So, of course. From there, I began to build numerous flows that help to re-automate our sales processes. And some of those flows currently work with Salesforce Flow Builder. And I think the two are like a match made in heaven.
So what types of automation solutions have you built?
Well, most of my flows really pertain to our selling processes. So, pretty much connecting Salesforce and NetSuite. We use those flows to create numerous object records, which include sales orders, contracts, quotes, and other records. We also have flows that download data into Google Sheets, and we use those to audit our active flows. For our future plans, we are planning to use the Composer to integrate Jira with our Salesforce to assist with our escalation processes in relation to cases that will basically route our cases to various Jira boards once they're escalated.
And which one did you start off with first? Cloudflow Designer or Flow Builder?
So I actually started with Flow Builder years ago.
Oh,
The
lucky
Flow
for you.
Yeah. The Flow Builder, it's been very helpful in achieving our automations, especially as an admin and being able to use clicks and not code. I was a little scared of it at first, through the first like few years of my admin journey. But as I started to learn how powerful the Flow Builder was, I was very eager to learn about it. And actually start building with it.
Excellent. All right, we're going to head off over to Jen. So, Jen, you and I met last fall when you presented at Dreamforce in the admin track. And what a coincidence that you're also from Boston. Like, I'm surprised this never came up in any of our discussions. What was your automation journey like with Flow and Composer?
Yeah, Jen, I think we're both really fabulous at keeping our Boston accent in check that we even fooled each other. So well done, us. Keeping with the Boston theme, I'm going to akin it to a polar plunge. I dipped in my toe in the automation waters with workflow rules and process builder. But when I was presented with a business problem where those tools were not going to enable success, I knew it was time to dive into Flow. So I was really intimidated. I was really apprehensive about it, but I took the plunge and I did a lot of independent training and learning and building and breaking things in a very short period of time, but have become a flow fanatic ever since.
And what cool automation solutions have you built?
Yeah, so one of my favorites I'm actually going to showcase today, which is connecting Salesforce and NetSuite together to pass order and fulfillment data back because it helps 4 teams immediately at once at my company. So it's a lot of fun. But other automations I built with Flow are screen flows, big fan of those, which enable, sales to keep in line with the processes that they have to follow. We've got great flows for record creation and updating when folks have to go visit customers and log those visits. So a lot of cool flows when it comes to updating and creating records.
And same question for you as I posed to Myra. Which one did you start off with first, Cloudflow Designer or Flow Builder?
Yeah, so Flow Builder as well. I definitely started there. That was where I took the plunge. It was the same project that required me to connect Salesforce and NetSuite. So I very quickly, on the heels of learning Flow Builder, I was learning Composer. And I found that they're both conceptually very similar, but how you work with them and the way that they think, if I can say that, is a little different. So it took me some time to grasp not applying Flow Builder logic to Composer logic and vice versa.
Great. All right. So, as we were preparing this episode, I asked the two of you to share with me your tips on learning MuleSoft Composer. And you both gave me these 3 same tips: map out your flows first, test, and use your resources. So, can you ladies elaborate on this a little further? Jen, what do you mean when you say map out flows first?
Yeah, Jen, happy to elaborate and collaborate. So for me, good automation is like art. You have to have an idea in your head about what your finished product should look like before you even start. And often that involves sketching it out before taking a brush or maybe even a mouse to the canvas. So for me, this looks like identifying who needs what information when and what they're doing with that information. So, for example, if I know that my field service teams need to be informed when a customer receives a new device, I know that I need to give them a notification. But that notification can only happen after the order has been booked and the device has been shipped. And those things can't take place unless the order is first approved. So there's an order of operations that needs to happen. And documenting that is critical so that I make sure I put the right automation steps in the right place to, keep that business process whole and accurate.
Great, thanks for that. And Myra, you mentioned the importance of testing. Can you tell us how you go about testing a composer flow?
Of course. So, testing is so important. I cannot drive this home enough. And testing is actually one of my favorite functions in Composer. It basically allows you to test your flows without activating them. So you can connect your flow to production or sandbox, which sandbox is always preferred and recommended. When you click the test button, it basically will start a 10-minute timer for you to trigger one test run of your flows. If it fails, you'll be able to see if the flow runs successfully or it fails during the testing period. And if it fails, you'll get to see exactly which step the failure took place in, so you can pinpoint where a fix needs to happen before you retest. And if it's successful, you can go ahead and proceed to activate the flow to run automatically or on a schedule, depending on what your triggering step is. And again, I have to reiterate, it is so important to test your flows before you actually activate them in your production org.
Yes, test, test, test. And lastly, you both believe in using your resources is really important. So Jen, tell me more about that.
Yeah, I do, Jen. I love my resources. And it's because while Salesforce is built to be intuitive, it's also built to be really customizable, like highly customizable. So that means there's more than one way to solve the problem you're trying to solve. So I lean a lot on Trailhead, on Salesforce blogs like yours. I'm a big fan, and the Trailblazer community. So, Trailhead allows me to grasp the concept of the tool. The community helps me troubleshoot the potholes that I hit, as well as think of alternative solutions. And I lean on blog posts to just expand my mind as to what's actually possible in the system.
Great. Thanks for sharing that. And Myra, can you share with us your use case for NetSuite and Salesforce and then your solution?
Sorry, I had to take myself off of mute. Sure. So my process again stemmed from my company abruptly losing access to our connection between Salesforce and NetSuite. So now we had a very small window to source, build, and test and implement a new tool. One of the most important processes was creating sales order records in NetSuite as our Salesforce opportunities closed. So during the time the connector was broken, I was pretty much responsible for completing this process manually for over a month. And it was very, very time consuming and taken away from other tasks I had as an admin. So my solution was the creation of a flow in Composer that triggers upon closing an opportunity in Salesforce. And then that creates a sales order record in NetSuite. And the creation of the sales order in NetSuite actually kicks off another flow that creates a sales order record in Salesforce, as Salesforce is our source of truth. When the sales order record is created in Salesforce, it then kicks off an email alert to finance, informing them that a new record has been created and it is ready for invoicing in NetSuite.
Cool. So, us admins like to nerd out. So can you show us your solution in Salesforce?
Of course. I'm going to go ahead and share my screen now. Can you let me know when you can see it?
Yes. Give it a sec. We can see it.
Perfect. Okay, so I am starting off in my sales app. And from here, I am going to navigate to the MuleSoft Composer app. So things you'll see when you first get into the app, you'll see a home page with various resources on MuleSoft Composer. On your next tab, you will see templates. These basically kind of guide you on certain flows so that they can be easier to set up. And they basically give you a template on certain steps and things that are required to build specific flows. And there are several here. The next tab is going to be a list of your flows with additional views that you can create. And then the last tab will be the usage summary, basically showing you the usage of how many flows you are using and tasks that are being created from those flows. I'm going to hop into my next tab to show you my actual flow. This one I have named Create NetSuite Sales Orders. I like to name them exactly as to what they're doing to make it easier for me to locate them. So here you're going to see my run history and showing if I have successful or failed flows, and you will see the start and end date of each run. So I'm just going to click view. Oh, great. Okay, let's go back and see if we can view it. I'm going to reload. And let's see if we can get into it. So now I'm going to view all steps of my flow. So I'm going to expand every section so we can see what we have here. Okay, so the basic structure of the flow is going to start with a triggering step, and then you build additional steps from there. So my first step, which is my trigger, is going to be on any new or updated opportunity record. I currently have 310 fields related to my opportunity record that will show results in this panel here. My second step is using an if-else statement. On this step, I would like to identify or filter which of those opportunity records I want to run my flow on. So I will be running my flow on any opportunity that equals close one stage. In my fourth step, I am still connected to Salesforce here. I am getting records from the related account of the opportunities from step one. I'm only returning 4 fields here, as these are the only 4 fields that I need to populate when we get down to my mapping step. I am also identifying the account ID between this step and the opportunity that was pulled from our triggering step. And I am ordering by ascending the account name, just in case there is more than one account related. Moving down to step 5, I am also getting the opportunity product records that are associated to the opportunity that we pulled from step 1. Again, I am looking at the opportunity field from the opportunity. I am matching the opportunity ID in this step to the opportunity ID from step 1. And I'm ordering by the opportunity product name. Step 6, I am introducing a for each statement, which is going to basically cycle through the list of accounts from step 4, and it's going to in return create sales order records for each one of those accounts. So this is my first step where I am connecting to NetSuite, because this is where we're going to be creating the sales order record. The remainder of the steps are pretty much mapping the fields between Salesforce and NetSuite that I need to create the sales order record. I also have this dynamic list here that is pulling in the opportunity products and relating them to a related object in NetSuite to the sales order called items. And after all the mapping is done, the flow is complete. It's a pretty simple flow. Once that is complete, there is a sales order record created in Salesforce, and this is going to kick off a flow that I have created in the flow builder, which I named new sales order. And this flow is also very simple. It is triggered on an opportunity when an opportunity is updated. And what it basically does, it takes that sales order number that is created from the composer flow and populates it. So once that field is no longer null, it is going to send a email alert over to my finance team, letting them know that a new sales order is created so that they can go ahead and proceed to invoice. And that's pretty much the end of my composer flow to flow.
Awesome. I see how Composer Flow is so similar to Flow in some regards, but a little different. Great use case and demo, Myra. Thank you for giving us a harbor cruise of the product for those that are new to it. Hey, Jen. So can you share with us your use case and solution?
Yeah, happy to. So my use case was looking to increase efficiency for our field application scientists and service teams that are working with customers by automating asset creation from a booked NetSuite order. So teams were traditionally relying on humans to create these records and then populate them with critical information around warranty expiration dates, serial numbers, who the customer is, and where it's located. And there was no formal process in place for that. So things were a little bit time delayed, and folks who needed the information timely weren't getting it in a quick manner. So my solution was to use MuleSoft Composer and Salesforce Flow, where we're able to create asset placeholder records so that we can let people know when something's actually been purchased, and an advance warning, if you will, that they've got a new customer to reach out to. And then once the order is actually shipped from NetSuite, update that placeholder record with the information like the warranty expiration date and serial number and all the necessary attributes to go do the next step and support the customer. So it's pretty fun, and that's what I'm going to show you today.
All right, so let's take a look at it.
All right. Give me an admin moment to share my screen. Okay. You should be seeing not Salesforce, which might be a surprise.
All right.
Cool. Thanks, Jen. So I actually wanted to start off with one of the key pieces I mentioned earlier about understanding your business process. So while this is a very oversimplified outline of the business process, it's trying to reinforce that concept of understanding when you're building the solution, what's happening in what sequential order, so you know where to put your automation. So for us, we can't create asset placeholder records until the order has actually been booked in NetSuite. And that can't be done until it's been approved and created in Salesforce. So today I'm going to dive into the transitioning from step 3 to step 4, where we're creating the placeholder assets. So drilling down a level, and again, looking at outlining that automation and where the data is moving, this image is meant to really represent something more like a schema that admins are used to. So here on my top row are my Salesforce records. So my quote is connected to a Salesforce order, which is ultimately connected to the asset record through a junction object of order asset. And my Salesforce order is connected to our NetSuite order record. And for my awesome admins, you've probably already caught the clues that I've left you, where I'm using Salesforce Flow to automate either record updating or creation, and where I'm using Composer to actually mule data between the two systems, between Salesforce and NetSuite. So let's actually crack open Salesforce. So I thought it would be helpful to actually see the end user experience first before diving into Composer and diving into Salesforce Flow. So here we're looking at one of my order records in Salesforce. And what this has on it is that it's got the list of products that should be passed over for the NetSuite order. And then also, we're just waiting to see that order asset record created as a related record. So I need to pretend to be NetSuite today. I don't have a NetSuite sandbox for us to use. So I'm going to put on my pretend NetSuite hat. So what would happen in our process is that once it was approved in Salesforce, it would fire off that Composer flow to create the order in NetSuite and then pass back a status change to the status of booked. So when I pretend to be Composer and pretend to be NetSuite and book the order, now what's happening is Salesforce Flow is picking up that record change. And if I scroll down the record, I will now see an order asset placeholder has been created for that coffee machine that they've purchased. Now, you're probably noticing only one record was created, but 2 things are on the order list. So the flow is also designed to determine which of the products are hardware that are things we want to track as assets in our system, and which ones are consumables or warranty or training, because those are things that we're not creating these asset records for. We're only looking at the hardware. So that flow did that determination and did the placeholder for me. Fast forwarding again, pretending to be NetSuite and Composer, play along with me. What would happen in NetSuite when the device is actually shipped, Composer would pass back onto this order record those serial numbers of what was shipped. So I'm going to pretend to be Composer for us today and put in some serial numbers. And let's see, just a few letters there. And then the coffee beans. And I'll hit save. Then simulating Composer, updating the record. Now what happens with these serial numbers is that it fires off the second Salesforce flow, which is actually going to update that placeholder with the appropriate serial number of the device that was shipped. So that flow also has logic built in to determine if the serial number is related to a device or if that serial number is related to a consumable, and update the appropriate record. All right, so let's actually see what this looks like under the hood, because admins are super curious. So I'm going to jump you through Composer, Salesforce Flow, Composer, and Salesforce Flow. So my first Composer flow, we're not going to dive into. You can probably tell by step 43 you don't want me to. But I did want to showcase the specific action at step 47, which is where in my record creation of the order in NetSuite, it's passing back information after successful creation to come back to that Salesforce order record and mark the status as booked. And that's important because that's the change that Salesforce flow is now looking for. So hopping into my Salesforce flow, I realize it's a little small, so let me zoom in for you here. All right, so this flow is looking at that Salesforce order record and looking for a change in the status. So if it's rejected, it's going to have a different path than if it's been booked. And if it's booked, this whole section over here, and I'll zoom out so you can actually see the entire section. This whole section here is evaluating the products on the order and determining which ones are devices and which ones are not. And then it's going to also see how many devices were on the order. And from there, it will actually create those asset records and then loop through those created asset records to then create the junction object of the order asset record to link all of those records together. And that's what creates the placeholder. Fast forwarding in time and heading back over into Composer, this particular flow is now being triggered off of a change in NetSuite. So when that NetSuite sales order is updated, I want Composer to listen. So coming down in here, I'm only looking for the changes to NetSuite orders that are connected to a Salesforce order. And then in our business process, very specific order statuses are related to shipping. So it's only those statuses and those record changes do I want to then scoop up any shipping information. So once it meets that condition of a shipping status, it will go get those related order records in Salesforce. And similar to Salesforce Flow, you have to iterate through in a loop fashion of your found records, even if it's just one. And then it's actually going to update that Salesforce order with those shipped serial numbers and those tracking numbers. So that was that other piece where I was pretending to be Composer. And then last, once it has those shipped serial numbers, another little busy flow, but we'll break it down for you. So let me zoom in. This one is evaluating if that serial number field has changed, and then it's evaluating what the serial number is. It's going through this iterative loop process here to determine, is that a serial number of a device or is that a serial number of a consumable? Because we only want those that are of a device. And then once it has all that information, it's actually going to scoop up all of the asset placeholder records we have in place and determine in the rest of these loops down here to figure out, do I already have a serial number associated to that placeholder, and marrying that against the information in the serial number field so that we don't accidentally take a serial number for one device and stamp it on another and have duplicates, or accidentally overwrite a record that already has a serial number. And that is what the rest of this particular flow is doing down here. And so coming back to my order record to orient you, I just took you through where Composer will scoop it up at approved and mark it booked when the order is booked in NetSuite. and that fires off my Salesforce flow to create the placeholder. And then once the order ships out of NetSuite, Composer feeds back those serial numbers, which fires off Salesforce flow to figure out which serial number to appropriately stamp on the placeholder. And that, Jen, is my solution.
Thank you, Jen, for that cool use case and solution. All right, so let's bring back Anand. Hearing about the solutions with Composer has me really excited about the future. So can you give us a little sneak peek into your roadmap?
Yes, Jen. Hi, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. Let's talk about what's on the short-term and medium-term roadmap for Composer. So first up, invocable Composer flows. Today, Composer flows start in two ways. One is with system changes. So you saw that in the demo where we have records created or updated, and the other is on a schedule. So we're introducing a third way, which is a listener that can be invoked. This will allow Composer flows to be triggered from other Salesforce automation tools like Salesforce Flow or Salesforce Orchestrator or Flow RPA. Composer customers have been asking for this for a while, and we'll have this as a beta feature in the upcoming summer release, followed by general availability a release later. We are also currently working on improvements to out-of-the-box logging on Composer flows, better error messaging when something does go wrong, and soon customers will also be able to handle these errors within the flow. For example, being able to send a Slack message or an email when the flow runs into a connectivity issue, for example. Further down the road for Composer are capabilities like supporting variables within a Composer flow, audit trails for Composer admins, being able to see who created a flow, who activated a flow, and who stopped a flow. Support for webhooks as flow triggers for systems that can support webhooks, and so on. That's all I have for the Composer roadmap. Back to you, Jen.
Great, super cool. And Trailblazer DX is next month, like 2 weeks from now. It's crazy. March 7th to 8th in San Francisco. And so for those going to TDX, can you share with us what they can expect in terms of automation content?
Yes, Trailblazer DX is coming soon, March 7th and 8th in San Francisco. And automation is going to be everywhere at Trailblazer DX. This includes 32 automation sessions and automation being showcased in most keynotes and as well as 4 demo booths. So for the admins who cannot join us in person, some of the keynotes and sessions will also be streamed on Salesforce Plus. So do tune in for that. Back to you, Jen.
Great. Thanks, Anand, for sharing with us your roadmap and insights into TDX. So we've been having technical issues, and we were able to get one question in before our actual live stream ended, but we will be posting this recording afterwards. So let me get our one question on. There it goes. All right. Question is from Isaac K. What's the difference between MuleSoft Composer and Flow? Anyone?
I can take that one. So Flow is something native to Salesforce, where automations can be built using within the Salesforce objects, as well as connecting to external systems using the HTTP connector within Salesforce Flow. MuleSoft Composer is a click-based product, which is enabling automation building throughout the organization. So you don't have to be a Salesforce admin to create automations using Composer Flow. There are out-of-the-box connectors. We support up to 28 connectors out of the box, including an HTTP connector that lets you connect to other systems that we don't have an out-of-the-box connector for. Uh, and Composer is built around operations. It's built around is built around taking pieces of business operations and automating them. For example, one of the most popular ones is when our customers are integrating their Salesforce to their NetSuite, when opportunities are marked close in Salesforce, they want to update NetSuite and they want to send a Slack message to the right account team. They're doing all of this, building this entire automation in Composer using clicks and not code.
Great, thanks for that. And if folks out there are interested in MuleSoft Composer, like how do they get that in their org?
So MuleSoft Composer is a separate add-on, and the folks who are interested in learning more, check out the trails and also reach out to your account team to learn more about Composer.
Great. All right. It's unfortunate that we weren't able to get to the live chat. So, all right, let's recap the episode. All right, so what you've learned from Myra today is how to complete your first flow using Composer resources, how to test that flow, and then how to use flow components. And what you learned from Jen Cole is the value of mapping out a process and data flow, how to use Composer and Salesforce Flow to work together, and considerations on why one tool should not do it all. All right, so next month we will showcase two trailblazers returning automation this guest, Narinder Singh, and Mark Jones, who will be using approvals, Flow, and Orchestrator, and Slack to solve their use case. They will be joined by product manager Antoine Cabot, who will share his roadmap for Orchestrator and Slack actions with us, as well as to answer your product questions. So set a reminder now on the live stream page and be reminded of this later. All right, Trailblazers, so now it's your turn. Hit the trail. Composer has some great trails where you can use a simulator to get the feel and practice with Composer with a Trailhead trail on the Composer, MuleSoft Composer. Next, practice, practice, practice. Use demo orgs and company sandboxes to play around with Flow Builder, and use real-life data in your sandboxes as a good way to see the impact of the value of Flow Builder. And last, lean on the community. Join the conversation and ask questions. You're only limited by your imagination, and the community expands your knowledge base to know what's possible beyond your experience. So join the MuleSoft Composer Trailblazer community group today. All right, and with that, I want to thank our guests today for surviving all the technical issues. It's been real.
It has.
So thank you for being guests on Automate This.
Thank you, Jen. Thanks, Myra.
Thank you for having us.
And thank you for all of you for joining us for this Automate This episode or watching it on replay. Look forward to seeing you on future sessions.